In 2007, Apple was essentially a company on the brink of suffocating itself. I mean, they had 27 different overlapping product lines.
Yeah, a total nightmare.
Exactly. Consumers were confused, the supply chain was an absolute mess, and their innovation engine was just stalling out. But Steve Jobs didn't save that company by inventing some, brand new complex piece of technology.
Right, he went in the exact opposite direction.
He really did. He saved it by deploying a 700-year-old philosophical weapon forged by a medieval monk.
It sounds like a bizarre contradiction, honestly, but it is one of the most powerful cognitive strategies we have today.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we spend our days staring at screens with like 32 tabs open, just drowning in 1,000 variables. And we are desperate for a way to process information without becoming totally paralyzed by it.
And that feeling of paralysis, that's exactly what we are dismantling in today's deep dive. We're looking at a cognitive compass designed to cut right through the noise, which is Occam's razor.
Yes.
A razor. But okay, let me set the record straight right up front. We are not talking about the boring high school textbook cliche of, the simpler answer is usually better.
Oh, definitely not. That framing completely neuters what this tool actually is.
Right.
If you just think simpler is better, you end up making terrible, really brittle decisions. What we're really talking about is the elegance of necessity.
The elegance of necessity. I love that phrasing.
Yeah, it's a discipline of the mind. It's basically an algorithm for epistemic efficiency.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the sheer clutter of our modern digital lives, all the data points, the overlapping apps, the endless metrics we track, it is shockingly similar to the dense, tangled metaphysical theories of the Middle Ages.
That is a great comparison. We've just swapped theological debates for data analytics.
Exactly, which is why we have to start in a 14th century English friary. To understand how to wield this razor today, we need to look at the environment that necessitated its creation in the first place.
Right. With William of Ockham, he was a Franciscan friar who looked at the intellectual establishment of his day.
Thomistic synthesis, right?
Exactly, the Thomistic synthesis. And he realized it was just buckling under its own weight.
It was this grand, incredibly intricate worldview where every physical object was tied to these abstract, invisible concepts.
Yes, the belief in universals as real, independent entities. So, to put it in perspective for you, imagine you're holding a red apple.
Okay, got my apple.
Today, you just say, this is an apple and its skin reflects red light. But under the Thomistic synthesis, you weren't just experiencing the physical apple.
Right.
You were also interacting with the universal concept of redness, which they believed existed out there in the ether, completely independent of the apple itself.
Wait, so to explain one basic piece of fruit, you had to invent a whole invisible category of redness floating around the universe.
Yep.
That sounds exhausting.
It was intellectually exhausting, and Occam sparked a revolution called nominalism by essentially saying, stop adding ghosts to the apple.
Stop adding ghosts.
Yeah. He declared that these universals were just flatus vocis, mere breath of the voice.
Flatus vocis. I love that. Basically just hot air.
Exactly, hot air. They are linguistic conveniences. I mean, we use the word red to group similar things together so we can communicate efficiently, but redness doesn't have an objective reality.
Makes total sense.
And from that realization, Occam laid down his methodological imperative, which is do not multiply entities beyond necessity.
But consider how radical that is for the time, or even now. He isn't saying the absolute truth is always simple.
No, not at all.
He's saying that the shortest explanation that accounts for all the evidence should be provisionally accepted because it minimizes the surface area for error.
Yes, it is the least likely to be wrong. And that is a crucial distinction. It isn't about truth. It's about probability.
Which makes you wonder about the modern equivalents. Like, how often do you add metaphorical redness to your own daily problems instead of just dealing with the apple right in front of you?
Oh, all the time.
We invent these elaborate narratives about, why a colleague didn't email us back or why a project failed, when the reality is usually staring us right in the face.
We do. We just love abstract layers. But if minimizing error is the goal here, we have to transition from the philosophy of a 14th century monk to the actual mechanics of modern problem solving.
Right. How does this razor actually cut?
Exactly. Let's look at the mechanics. Because it isn't magic. It functions as a strict mechanism of information theory.
Okay, break that down for me.
Think of an explanation or theory as a causal model. It's a machine. It takes data as an input and produces understanding as an output.
Sure.
In information theory, every single assumption in your model is a moving part, and every moving part introduces what we call epistemic load.
Epistemic load. I want to visualize this for everyone. Think of assumptions like carrying heavy rocks in a backpack on a hike.
Oh, I like that.
Right. Every extra rock you add to your theory, every what if, or maybe this happened, is an assumption. And every rock exponentially increases the chance that you'll collapse before reaching the truth.
That analogy holds up perfectly because the razor operates in a very specific 5-phase sequence to lighten that backpack.
Okay, phase 1.
The first phase is axiomatic isolation. You have to strip the problem down to its irreducible facts, what must be true regardless of interpretation.
Like the fact that a company's stock crashed, or a patient's fever.
Or the specific error code on the screen.
Yeah, those are your anchors.
The rocks you absolutely have to carry. You can't toss those out.
Right. Then you move to causal chain construction, where you map the necessary sequence of events between those anchors.
Okay, getting from point A to point B.
Exactly. After that comes the really critical step, which is the epistemic load audit. You actually count your assumptions.
Literally just tally them up.
Yes, because the total likelihood of your model being true is the product of the likelihoods of all its assumptions.
Ah, I see. If one assumption has a 50% chance of being true, and you stack 4 of them together, your model's probability of success just plummets.
Wait, if that's true, then adding extra explanations to a theory doesn't make it stronger. It actually makes it structurally weak.
Yes, it's mathematically more fragile. Which leads to phase 4, redundancy elimination.
Okay, what does that look like?
Well, people often confuse redundancy in explanation with robustness. They think, I have 3 different reasons why this happened, so my theory is bulletproof.
Right, covering all their bases.
But it's not bulletproof. In information theory, that is called overfitting. If one mechanism explains 3 effects, it is inherently more powerful than having 3 separate mechanisms for those 3 effects.
Wow. And that leaves us with the final phase, right? Minimum energy selection.
Yes, looking for the lowest Kolmogorov complexity.
Hold on. Kolmogorov complexity. That sounds intense. What is that?
It's a concept from computer science. It essentially refers to the length of the shortest possible description needed to produce a specific outcome. Like, if you have to write 10 paragraphs to explain how a user should navigate a software menu, the complexity is too high.
Right, the user's already lost.
Exactly. If you can do it in one intuitive icon, you've found the minimum energy state.
And what is wild is that this logic is completely substrate independent. It works in biology, where a metabolic pathway taking 10 steps when one would do is evolutionarily unstable.
Nature literally selects it out.
Yeah. Or in detective work.
Yeah.
If an alibi requires like a camera glitch, a lookalike, and the stolen car, all happening at the exact same moment.
The epistemic energy required to maintain that story is absurd.
It really is.
Yeah.
The simplest explanation that they were at the scene has the lowest Kolmogorov complexity.
So when we take this conceptual framework and apply it to the high-stakes arenas of business and science, the results aren't just, marginal improvements. They are explosive.
Let's go back to that Apple example from the beginning. Because looking at it through the lens of an epistemic load audit, Jobs wasn't just doing financial cost-cutting.
No, not at all.
He was looking at 27 product lines and realizing that every single one was a massive assumption about what a consumer wanted.
Exactly. Every product required different marketing, different supply chains, different engineering teams.
It was a massive epistemic burden on the entire organization.
And by slashing the portfolio down to 3 core products, the Mac, the iPod, and the iPhone, he performed the ultimate redundancy elimination.
He minimized the Kolmogorov complexity of Apple's entire business model. The signal was amplified because the noise was destroyed.
You see the exact same information theory applied at Netflix, too.
Oh, yeah. Abandoning the DVD mailers.
Right. We all know they abandoned the hybrid model of mailing physical DVDs while also offering streaming. But think about the mechanical complexity they shed.
Physical warehouses, postal delays.
Inventory tracking, scratched disks, all of those are massive variables.
Just huge rocks in the backpack.
Exactly. Streaming alone wiped out thousands of potential failure points in their causal chain.
And we see this exact same principle in the laboratory, too. Look at CRISPR gene editing.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Right. Before CRISPR, scientists were trying to edit genes using these incredibly complex delivery systems like lipid nanoparticles.
They were engineering these highly intricate microscopic vehicles, which naturally meant highly inconsistent results.
Lots of moving parts,
Yeah.
lots of heavy rocks. Then CRISPR comes along. It reduces the entire mechanism to just 2 components.
A guide RNA and a Cas9 enzyme.
That's it. The scientific community didn't adopt CRISPR just because it was a neat novelty. They adopted it because it drastically reduced the number of failure points.
It was the minimum energy selection for gene editing.
Even Elon Musk, standardizing Tesla's battery cells around the 2170 format, did the exact same thing.
By eliminating variables in the supply chain, he removed assumptions. These leaders are using first principles thinking as a cognitive filter against inherited assumptions.
It gives you the agility to outmaneuver loaded competitors who are still, dragging around the weight of this is how we've always done it.
Totally.
But this brings up a pretty glaring psychological question for me.
Okay, what's that?
If dropping the weight is this powerful, and if simplicity wins, why on earth do human beings naturally build such complex, convoluted monstrosities in the first place? Why are we so drawn to the noise?
Well, the diagnosis here is a phenomenon known as the epistemic ego.
Epistemic ego.
Yeah. Complexity feels like depth. It feels like rigor. If a consultant hands you a 2-page summary, you might question their fee, right?
Absolutely. I paid you 10 grand for 2 pages.
Exactly. But if they hand you a 200-page report with 50 variables, you just assume they've done the work. Complexity is often a cognitive crutch.
I have to admit, I am completely guilty of this.
We all are.
I remember early in my career creating this needlessly complex spreadsheet. I had like a million pivot tables, color-coded tabs, cross-referenced data points.
Yeah.
All just to impress my boss.
I've been there.
And half of it was totally useless for the actual decision we had to make, but it made me feel like I was providing undeniable value,
It's entirely natural. The human mind is a narrative engine. We are drawn to coherent stories. And strangely enough, a complex explanation with lots of interlocking, moving parts can actually feel more complete to us than a simple one.
Even if the simple one fits the data better.
Yes, because the complexity protects our ego. It justifies our effort.
So how do we stop? If we know our brains want to add redness to the apple just to feel smart, how do we actually redesign our cognitive environment?
You have to institutionalize simplicity.
Okay. Oh.
One method is a simplicity audit. Before adopting any complex model or strategy, you force your team to write down the absolute simplest alternative.
Force them to baseline it.
Right. And then you ask what would have to be true for the simple version to be correct.
I also love the idea of a complexity tax, making every additional assumption really earn its place.
Oh, absolutely.
Like you want to add a new feature to the software, fine, but you have to prove that the epistemic load it adds is actually worth the probability penalty.
Precisely. You can also practice inverse multiplication.
Which is what...
Instead of always asking what caused this outcome, you flip it and ask, what can I remove from this explanation without losing its predictive power?
Oh, that's smart.
And finally, use pre-mortem reversals. Argue for the exact opposite conclusion using the simplest framework possible. It stress tests your own convoluted reasoning.
But let me stop you there, because if we are aggressively trimming and taxing complexity, aren't we entering a danger zone? Occam's razor is a heuristic. It's a rule of thumb.
It is.
If complex systems genuinely require an elegant sufficiency to survive, applying the razor blindly makes a system dangerously brittle, doesn't it?
I'd push back on that slightly. The razor itself isn't brittle. It's a diagnostic tool.
Okay.
The brittleness comes from the epistemic ego of the person wielding it. What you were describing is the simplicity fallacy.
The simplicity fallacy.
The arrogant belief that the universe is somehow obligated to be simple just because we prefer it that way.
Right.
Nature does not care about our aesthetic preferences for elegance.
Right, because quantum mechanics is not simple. Chaos theory is not simple. The human brain is a wildly complex, highly redundant system.
Exactly. And simplistic explanations can be actively dangerous. In medicine, there's a famous heuristic taught to students. When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras.
Meaning, look for the most common, simple explanation first. Don't assume it's a rare tropical disease if it's just a common cold.
Yes. And as a starting point, that's sound logic for managing cognitive load. But applied too rigidly, that simple rule has led to the systematic misdiagnosis of rare diseases.
The zebras.
Right, the zebras. It particularly harms populations with atypical presentations. The simplest explanation is often the most likely, but you cannot mistake most likely for definitively correct.
That makes a lot of sense. But look at what happens when that rigidity scales up. Think about what systems theorists like Amora Diallo point out regarding pandemic supply chains.
Oh, yes.
That is a perfect example of the razor being dangerously misapplied by corporate executives.
Okay, you have a point there. That is a prime example of institutionalizing simplicity for the wrong reasons.
Right. Companies use the logic of the razor to optimize their supply chains for maximum lean efficiency. They cut out all the redundancies.
They removed the extra warehouses, the buffer stock, the overlapping suppliers.
They dropped all those heavy rocks.
And they achieved incredible short-term financial gains. But when a global disruption hit, those lean systems just shattered.
Because the system had lost its requisite variety.
Yes. Requisite variety is a systems theory term, meaning the system lacked the diversity of responses it needed to adapt to a shock.
They shaved it too close. By prioritizing simplicity, they incurred a massive cognitive debt. They outsourced their strategic thinking to a few simple KPIs, ignoring the underlying complexity of global logistics entirely.
Which leads to innovation atrophy. Complex systems actually thrive on a certain amount of productive tension and friction.
Really?
Yeah. If you prune the noise too aggressively, you eliminate the very conditions needed for a breakthrough.
It's totally counterintuitive. But relentless simplicity can actually increase systemic unpredictability.
Definitely.
Look at social media algorithms. They optimize for the simplest possible engagement metric, which is usually anger.
Right. Negative emotion.
It is a highly efficient minimum energy selection for keeping someone on a platform. But that simple optimization results in massive nonlinear cascades, like societal polarization.
Which is exactly why Occam's razor can never be used in isolation. If you just swing it wildly, it becomes a weapon of intellectual laziness.
So it has to be embedded in a broader latticework of thinking tools.
Exactly. You pair it with inversion, and you have to temper it with Chesterton's fence.
Chesterton's fence. That's vital here.
It is. It's the principle that before you tear down a fence, or in our case, before you cut away a layer of complexity, you must first understand why it was put there in the first place.
Because some complexity exists for a very good reason.
Right. You don't just delete a line of code because you don't understand it. You calibrate your simplicity against feedback loops.
And beyond just logic or business strategy, there is almost a spiritual dimension to all this, isn't there?
I think so, yeah.
Treating these superfluous assumptions not just as bad math, but as intellectual clutter.
It's the difference between a hoarder and a wisdom keeper. We often accumulate ideas, theories, and complex frameworks not because they're useful, but because they make us feel safe.
They make us feel in control of an unpredictable world.
Exactly. In that sense, subtraction becomes a purgative discipline. There's a beautiful metaphor for this. You do not prune a tree to make it smaller. You prune it to allow the fruit to ripen.
Wow, that hits hard.
Yeah.
You prune it to allow the fruit to ripen.
It reorients the whole goal of simplicity.
It really does.
Yeah.
It makes me think about how complexity is often just a fear of the starkness of truth. We hide in complex analysis because facing the simple truth would require us to finally take action.
Yes.
Like if the answer is simple, I need to quit this job, or this product is failing, the mandate is clear. But if we make it complicated, we could just keep studying it forever.
It is infinitely easier to analyze a problem endlessly than it is to actually solve it. We don't simplify to be lazy, we simplify to be free.
To be free.
We clear away the flattest focus, the hot air, the unnecessary ghosts, so we can finally see what is essential.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We have journeyed from a 14th century friar challenging the philosophical establishment to the minimum energy selection that powers CRISPR.
Right.
All the way to the very structure of how we organize our own minds and confront our epistemic egos. The elegance of necessity isn't about finding the easiest way out.
No, it is a rigorous discipline.
Exactly. The next time you are facing that overwhelming decision, completely paralyzed by variables, don't ask yourself what else you need to add to understand the problem. Ask yourself what you can remove without losing the core truth.
Because the true mastery lies not in always choosing simplicity, but in cultivating the discernment to know when simplicity is truth and when it is merely an evasion.
I want to leave you with a final lingering question to explore on your own today. If our minds naturally gravitate toward adding complexity just to feel secure, what is one area of your life right now where your expertise or your thoroughness is actually just a highly complicated excuse for inaction? Where are you adding redness to the apple so you don't have to take a bite?
That is a profound place to start. Let the razor cut the mind, not just the world.
Drop the rocks from your backpack, clear your tabs, and we'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.